Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to finish off topic 7, talking about speciation and cladograms. Speciation is the creation of new species, and cladograms is how we look at those species. So let's dive right in. So how do new species arise? Well, first let's give like a general definition of species. That way we're all on the same page and we're all using the same working definition. So we're going to define species as a group of organisms that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. That means that their offspring can also have offspring. Speciation is the accumulation of mutations and trait differences that make two organisms unable to interbreed anymore. So when speciation occurs, it is the production of two or more species that can no longer interbreed, or they could interbreed but cannot produce fertile offspring. Okay, that's the key there, the fertile offspring. They need to produce offspring that can also have offspring. Now, there's a number of ways that speciation can occur, but we're going to talk about 3 very specific ways: geographical, behavioral, and temporal. So to have speciation occur geographically, it means that there must be a physical barrier separating the populations. This could be like a giant mountain range or a river, and they can't cross the river. There is like a population of squirrels that can't cross the Grand Canyon, and so they've actually gone through speciation because the Grand Canyon is a geographical barrier to them. Behavioral is having some sort of different courtship behavior that is not working for the two species, okay? So this could be like a dance that birds do to attract other birds, or like other animals do to attract other animals. This could be songs that birds sing. This could be any sort of behavior that is some sort of mating ritual within the species. So some sort of behavioral difference. Temporal deals with time. So this could be that populations reproduce at different times of the day, or different seasons, right? There's flowers that bloom at different times of the year. So temporally, looking strictly at time, they are unable to reproduce with other flowers because they bloom at different times of the year, right? Different seasons. Now, when we're looking at all of these changes over time, we're looking how all of these species have started to evolve. There are 2 thoughts of how changes occur over time. There's gradualism, which is slow, change over time. You can kind of see all of the in-between colors. If we're looking at this example, right, changes in phenotype over time. We start with this orange butterfly, and it will slowly get lighter into white and slowly get darker into this sort of, I don't know, dark red, maroon color. But you see all of these in-between phenotypes as the gradual change happens to this final color. Whereas punctuated equilibrium is sort of the opposite of that. You have really fast change followed by long periods of no change. This idea of punctuated equilibrium is supported by evolutionary evidence, so we are going to focus on punctuated equilibrium more, but you should be aware of both of them. And in punctuated equilibrium, you can see we have our initial orange butterfly, and then you have this like very quick, fast change, right? It quickly goes to this maroon, this orange, and this white in this kind of second time period. And that's what continues to move over time, is orange goes to orange, goes to orange, white goes to white, goes to white, right? You don't see all of these in-between phenotype colors. So fast change followed by no change. Now, we're going to kind of talk about how we look at that over time, and we use what's called a cladogram. This image to the right here, this is a cladogram. We're going to talk about it a lot. We're going to practice a lot with cladograms. But what is a cladogram? Well, it's a tree diagram, right? That's what this is, with all of these branches coming off, and it's just a tree diagram that shows similarities and differences between species. We look at this and we can see, okay, where in evolution did these sort of branch off from the common ancestor? What are the characteristics that differentiate these species? That's what a cladogram does. That's what it provides for us. They are mostly based on DNA-based sequences, right? That's the most accurate way to determine what species is what species, right? What the differences between species are is based on their DNA. We can also look at their amino acid sequences in a protein because, right, as DNA goes through protein synthesis, it does produce proteins. DNA is more specific, but we can use amino acid sequences because it's better than nothing, okay? So let's talk about all of the key points of a cladogram, and then we're gonna really go through a cladogram together. So the key points. When a cladogram branches off, okay, it will branch into multiple species. We call that a node. And a node is like just an example of a speciation event. That's when a common ancestor splits into two or more species. So if we're looking at this image, we have our root ancestor. This is going to be like our common ancestor for these three species. It doesn't matter what these three species are. This is just how a cladogram works. And right here, you see how red goes up and purple goes down. This right here would be called a node. As we move up the red and it branches off into the green A and the blue B, that is a second node. So these are two different speciation events that have led to the creation of three distinct species. When you group a species together, like they're derived from a common ancestor, the same common ancestor, we call that a clade. So do you see how species C is sort of like out on its own, but A and B are together off of the same node? A and B would be considered a clade, but A, B, and C would not be, okay? They're not within the same clade. If there was another organism down here, then we could maybe talk about different clades, but right now the only clade we see right here is species A and species B. Now you can see in this example, these different colors. This is not going to be on every clade. We don't usually color coordinate like this, but the green is specific to A. Only species A has gone through whatever this green is showing, this change in characteristics. This blue is specific to species B. Only species B has gone through this particular change in characteristics. But the red is a shared common history between A and B because both A and B have gone through it. There was just a second speciation event that then split them into their own distinct species. Okay, and last but not least, how we really look at a cladogram is we look at derived characteristics. So derived characteristics are the traits that appear on later organisms, so characteristics that have been derived, that have been kind of produced within these species in later organisms, but not earlier ones. So we start with this cladogram that we're looking at right here. We see that this is our root organism, or our original common ancestor. And as we move through this, you will see these like colored columns, and those are our derived characteristics. So as we go through, we have a lancelet, which is just like an invertebrate, and a lamprey. Okay, we see that we have our first node, which shows that we have differentiated the lancelet from the rest of these. So all of these now contain a vertebral column. Okay, this is saying that once you've passed this column, everything after this has this derived characteristic. So that means everything, lamprey, tuna, salamander, turtle, leopard, they all have a vertebral column, which is a spine. As we continue on and we go through this, we have a second speciation event, a second node. So now the lamprey, it has a vertebral column, but it does not have the rest of these derived characteristics. So it is on its own, and the rest of these have a hinged jaw. That means that they can move their jaw up and down like you can. As we continue on, you just sort of see how it changes. So now the tuna will be eliminated from this next derived characteristic for walking legs, right? Tuna fish don't have walking legs. Then a salamander will be removed from having an amniotic egg. And then finally, a leopard is by itself in this particular cladogram for having hair. So the derived characteristics show what specific characteristic has differentiated these species from the other species on this cladogram. We are going to do so much practice with this, so if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed with cladograms, that's okay. We will work on it in class, don't you worry, but I am so proud of you for making it through all of these notes.